What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, Tuesday morning, Tuesday wherever you're listening from. Either way, you've made your way into episode 361 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let's begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on YouTube and on X. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on X and on Instagram. Also, make sure to subscribe to IE Sports Radio on YouTube if you haven't already. If you have, awesome. Tell a friend, tell your family, tell any volleyball fan to subscribe to IE Sports Radio if possible. We have surpassed 500 subscribers, and we're trying to get to 1,000. I know it's a steep road, but if we could make it to 500, we could definitely make it to 1,000. So definitely get subscribers to us. And if you haven't already, subscribe to IE Sports Radio for more volleyball content, more sports content, more whatever. Also, check out our website, iesportsradio.com, for all of your latest sports news, our soon-to-be blog to hopefully be back, and all of our other shows that are dedicated to all major sports around the country. For the last 12 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to, like I said, building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Before we get on into the volleyball action, let us take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we will recap the women's VNL finals. Also, I got to turn off my AC, but I digress. But until then, let's take ourselves a quick break and talk to you all what we are all about. See you all in a little bit.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out our website and definitely follow us on social media if you haven't already. We appreciate everyone's support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. And the way you can follow Set Point on social media is on X and TikTok at set_point.ie. You could also follow me personally on X as well at Teran Rodriguez 1. I'm going to be hopefully tweeting out a little bit more soon in the coming days. Also, you can follow Set Point on Instagram at set_point.iesr. You could also follow Set Point on Facebook as well. That's kind of tethered to my Instagram account, but I digress in that regard, especially for monetization purposes and whatnot. All right, so without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. So I actually do need a little bit of an explanation on why I'm going live today as opposed to yesterday. So yesterday, if you all saw Facebook, Instagram, and X, you all saw that I posted that I was not going live. So yesterday I had a career fair. Yes, your boy's trying to have his career take off before he reaches that dreaded early 40-year-old stage mark. So yeah, it was. I unfortunately I couldn't. I was really split between foregoing the career fair and just doing Set Point, and basically going to the career fair and just moving Set Point to today. I eventually decided ultimately to move Set Point to today and do the career fair. It was fun. It was a nice little career fair. I don't think the career fair had anything really in my job realm, but honestly, it was still fun to attend. I got to meet people from USC the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, the Dodgers, La Sierra, which actually added just men's volleyball just this past season, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah. To reiterate, I feel bad for not going live yesterday, but it feels weird going live on a Tuesday just because this week's kind of a busy week for me, and now I have an even bit busier week with having to move set point and whatnot. But yeah, that's why I didn't go live yesterday. So for those that missed me yesterday, I'm sorry. But I am here now. But for the most part, I should be back to my regular time and day next week and beyond, unless something occurs. And if anything, I'll just let you all know. So there you have it right there. That's why I didn't go live last week. But if you all, or not live last week, live yesterday. But yeah, that's what happened to me. So I didn't die. I didn't really forget about you all. So let's just clear all this out. And yeah, now let's get on into it. So the women's VNL finals were last week, and man, there were some great finals. So in the end, Türkiye wound up winning the gold, hence why the title was called "Let's Talk Türkiye" instead of "Let's Talk Turkey." It's "Let's Talk Türkiye." So yes, I am a master of puns. Yeah, and a master of titles, but I digress. But yeah, there was quite a bit that happened in terms of the women's VNL finals. I will just say, whoever thought of giving us these times, y'all are evil. Y'all are evil. I mean, the first semifinal was at the first quarterfinal was at 1 a.m. and the second one was at 4:30. It was a nightmare trying to stay awake. It's like, I don't know what to do, man. I don't know what to do. So it is what it is, and sometimes that I just gotta take the L and and basically just stay awake. I almost didn't want to go to sleep, but I had to get some sort of shut eye. Otherwise, I would have just been a dreading zombie. But I digress. Anyway, as for the quarterfinals, the quarterfinal round, it was rather interesting. So the one match I unfortunately couldn't watch the Italy versus Netherlands matchup, but I didn't really miss much when it came to that. As I'll just say it right now, that one was kind of a wash. Of all the quarterfinal matches that were in the VNL finals, that one was kind of the I wouldn't say the most boring, but it was the most expected. Now, Netherlands was making its second ever women's VNL finals appearance. Unfortunately, they wound up running into a buzzsaw that was Italy, which they didn't even need to play Paula Egonu all that much. So there you have it right there. That was basically how Italy wound up winning in approximately 70 minutes. That's just how dominant that Italy was when it came to this matchup. So if you missed that matchup, don't worry, you didn't miss too much, like I mentioned in my recap. But yeah, that was how Italy swept Netherlands. So the next match was a little bit more exciting. Japan versus Brazil. Now, Brazil was coming in on a 2-game skid. It was a little concerning. I was wondering, I know they just lost Julia Kudias to injury, and man, it was a tough season-ending injury, but Brazil wound up taking down Japan in 4. I thought this was going to go 5, and I even predicted that I was going to go 5. But to Brazil's credit, they bounced back very nicely, and they wound up winning in 4. So that is good right there. I think that Brazil needed this win because their mantra was pretty much gold or bust. That's what everyone was saying about Brazil, and I thought Brazil played a good, clean game for the most part. I thought it was going to go 5 because Japan actually went up by 2. They went up 17-15, but for Brazil to turn the tide and end the set on a 10-3 run, I was very impressed. So yeah, that was basically how Brazil wound up taking down Japan. I expected, okay, I shouldn't say that, but I knew Brazil was going to win. I just didn't think that Brazil was going to win it in 4. I thought that one was at least going to go. I thought it was actually going to go 5, but sometimes you just have to grind it out and win it in 4. And that is exactly what Brazil did. So those were last Wednesday's quarterfinal matchups. So now let's jump to Thursday. So thankfully I didn't have work on last Thursday. But the first matchup of Thursday's matchups were Türkiye and Canada. Now this one was a lot more 50-50 than I thought it would be. Canada was making its first ever women's VNL finals appearance, which I thought was incredible. While Türkiye had been pretty much expected throughout most of the women's VNL final. They were expected to make the women's VNL finals. In the end, Türkiye wound up winning in 4, but I will just say the first set went to Canada, and I'll just say it right now, Canada looked ready, but Türkiye was able to turn the tide and win that second set. The third set, Canada went up 17-12, and it was starting to look like scary times for Türkiye. But Türkiye had Melissa Vargas step up to the service line. She delivered some clutch serves, which helped Türkiye tied up at 17-17, and eventually they wound up taking the third set and the fourth set. Melissa Vargas is just such a cheat code for Türkiye. It's just ridiculous, if you ask me. So Türkiye, I should have known that Türkiye's experience was going to be the key for them to beating Canada, because Canada just doesn't have the VNL finals experience like Türkiye does, and sometimes it just happens. But it is what it is, and yeah, look, Kira Van Rijk was unbelievable for Canada throughout the entire women's VNL. She actually wound up leading the entire women's VNL in points overall, which I think is really tough to do. But for Türkiye, they just had it wasn't just Melissa Vargas. They had other players stepping up, like their libero, Igor. She thought she was pretty amazing. And then they had, and then it was just, like I said, it wasn't just Melissa Vargas at the pin stepping up. They had their middles also stepping up too. Türkiye had someone else stepping up who had herself a big women's VNL finals week. I am blanking. Baladin is her name. She had 13 kills. Baladin had 13 kills, which I thought was impressive. And like I said, Igor is her name. She had herself 11 Igor. She had 11 digs. If I butchered any of these names, I apologize. So, yeah, Türkiye, I thought, did a good job responding after that first set. Now, for Canada, look, they did as much as they possibly could. Like I said, Kira Van Rijk was phenomenal. You also had Serena Gray with 13 kills. I wish they could have gone to Anna Smrek some more. She had 4 kills, which was solid. And then they also had where was Emily Maglio? Emily Maglio only had 3 kills, but she did have 6 digs, which is pretty good for a middle blocker. She actually had the second most digs on the team in that match, which I think is pretty interesting if you ask me. But for Canada, this is just another learning process. I'll be seeing Canada when they play the United States on August 16th at the Brent Event Center on the campus of UC Irvine in the USA Challenge Cup or at USA Volleyball Cup. You know what I mean. Anyway, but yeah, it was a great run for for Canada, but Türkiye was just too much for them. All right, now speaking of the United States, we got to rip the Band-Aid off with this one. I've kind of dodged around this whole thing too much, and now we have to get into it. The United States and China. So the first set, okay, I should actually paint the picture of China. So China, they fished outside the top 8. They finished 9th, but because they were the host team, they wound up getting a spot into the VNL finals, which means Poland, unfortunately, was on the outside looking in. Well, the United States was the number 1 seed. Now, in years past, China has given the U.S. some fits, not like in the Olympics in 2024 and in past VNL finals. The two were actually rivals, but I don't know what happened with the rivalry when it came to 2021 in terms of the Tokyo Olympics. So, anyway. But the United States was facing a younger China team than before. I think China only had a few of their national team players back from a few years ago. There was mainly they probably had the youngest roster because most of those players were like 17, 18-year-olds. But the first set was pretty much all United States. They wound up winning that first set 25-15. it looked like China was very uncomfortable in that first set. It just felt like some growing pains, but the United States was able to get the job done that first set. Now, the second set, it could have been a lot better for the United States, but they actually led throughout a good chunk of the first or good chunk of the second set, and then China made a late comeback, tied it up at 20-20, and eventually wound up taking the second set 25-23. That was a bummer right there, just because the U.S. had their opportunities, but unfortunately, China just did not let up. And the third set, China pretty much led throughout the most part as they took that set 25-20, and I was just very displeased. It's like I picked in case you all need a refresher. Excuse me. In case you all need a refresher, I picked the United States to win the whole women's VNL last episode. And I was even singing praises of Eric Sullivan and how he got this team as the number 1 seed of the women's VNL finals. And I was really starting to become sick to my stomach. It's like, oh my gosh, really? Thankfully for the U.S., they turned it around. They wound up taking the fourth set pretty much convincingly, 25-17. The fifth set, the U.S. jumped out to a 5-2 lead. But eventually, China tied it up at 6-6. And eventually, China went up 13-11. And I was like, oh, no, this is not happening. And eventually, the U.S. dropped that fifth set to China, 15-13. And, God, that's such a tough way to go out if you're the United States. Look, I don't care if we need to have this whole talk of the U.S. got screwed facing the host team. This was the case back when Serbia was the host a few years ago, and the U.S. was the number 1 seed, only to lose to Serbia in a 5-setter, which they almost reverse swept their way to victory. But yeah, for the United States, it was pretty iffy. I mean, I can't just put this all on Eric Sullivan just because it's not all his fault. I mean, the left side was just not as effective as it was in previous rounds. Now, Jordan Thompson was just a force on the right side. She had 21 kills. She was highly effective. And the U.S. didn't really have their greatest offensive output when Dana Retke was their second leading scorer from the middle with 14 kills. And Asia O'Neal also had 10 kills. So the middles and the right side were perfect. The left side, aka the outside, was just no good. It was not as great. I mean, Avery Skinner did have 11 kills, and Logan Eggleston also had 13 kills, but it just wasn't going to fly, unfortunately. They needed the left side to be on their A game to a T. Now, for China, they were led by Zhuang. If I'm mispronouncing these names, I apologize. Zhuang led the way with 15 kills for China. Then Gong also had 12 kills, and then Tang also had 11 kills. Look, I got to give it up to China. They had a lot of sense of urgency in that fifth set, and they played so hard for their crowd. I was just ultimately impressed by them. They just looked like the team that wanted to win more. They were just on it. So, unfortunately for the U.S., I got to give my thoughts on this. I'm very disappointed just because I gave a lot of praises to Eric Sullivan, and I picked the United States just because I felt that they had the experience. I felt that they learned a lot from last year's VNL finals and VNL altogether, only for them to get one and done. It's just unbelievable, dude. It's sickening, if you ask me. And I guess the stat was brought up that the United States has not medaled for the past 3 years, which I remember when I interviewed Eric Sullivan at Miracosta High in the red versus blue scrimmage, and he said, everything we're trying to do, it's going to be gold. Where's that gold, Eric? I wanted to see gold in the women's VNL. You broke my heart, buddy. We can't ultimately blame this on Eric altogether. I mean, yeah, Eric could have made some better decisions. He shouldn't have taken out Jordan Thompson. But hey, the U.S. should have never been put in that situation where they were down 13-11 because they were leading throughout a good chunk of that fifth set. Unfortunately, they just could not close the deal. As Marcus Lowe Scrape pops in the chat room, he says, salute. Thank you, Marcus. Salute to you too. All right, but going back to the United States, look, this could have definitely been, this was very winnable, and it's very sad that Dana Retke had herself quite the game, only for the U.S. to unfortunately poop the bed. And it sucks because I really wanted the U.S. to at least medal. I at least wanted them to get to the semifinals, but they just couldn't do that. It really was frustrating, and it just made watching the women's VNL semifinals a lot tougher and a lot more painful, if you ask me. So, like, if I had to give an award out to the most disappointing team of the women's VNL, it has to be the United States, because they were the only team to get upset in the quarterfinals. Every top 4 team, Brazil, Italy, and Türkiye, wound up winning. The United States was the only team to get upset, seed-wise. Sad, sad, sad. And it sucks because I think the U.S. definitely could have won that one, but unfortunately, China made some great adjustments, and sadly for the U.S., their left sides were not effective. It's more concerning when the middles are more effective than the outside hitters, which something has to be done here. And that's no disrespect to Logan Eggleston or Avery Skinner. They were good, but in order to win gold at the women's VNL or the VNL in general, you got to be great. So overall, it was a collective loss from the U.S. They won their matches in the preliminary round as a team, and then they lost in the quarterfinals as a team. And hopefully they use this experience to get better when it comes to the World Championships or I think it's the Elite Six. Either way, we want to see gold, Eric. I want to see gold. I at least want to see a medal, for goodness sake. But the fact that you're telling me everything we're going to do, it's going to be gold, and you lose in the first round? Ooh. 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 Y'all are lucky I have patience with Eric Sullivan. Y'all are lucky that I have patience just because Eric Sullivan is a LOVB or League One volleyball championship coach. Otherwise, I would have to erupt. Anyway, but yeah, I have patience, but it just really put me in a foul mood. I was just mad the entire day. I was ready to go for a walk, but then the U.S. lost, and I was like, you know what? I ain't going to leave the house. It was just really tough. And like I said, Saturday, when it came to getting up to watch the women's VNL semifinal matches, was just tougher. So let's move on to those semifinals matches. So first semifinal was an instant banger and classic matchup. It was Brazil versus Italy. And look, I am on Instagram as well, and I told Key Michael, she is a fantastic content creator when it comes to the sport of volleyball, and she's also a great commentator as well. So give her a follow if you haven't. Also follow Volleyverse. But yeah, Key Michael recapped the Italy-Japan match, and I commented and said Italy and Brazil are going to feed families, and it's going to be a great matchup. And a couple people didn't agree. One person thought it was going to be 3-0, probably in favor of Italy. And yeah, he said it's going to be 3-0, but sure. And then another person, to give them the benefit of the doubt, I'll just say they said, nah, Brazil's just too banged up. If Brazil was at full strength, it would be a more interesting matchup. Don't tell that to Brazil. Like I said in my recap, and like I said overall, never count out Brazil because they still had a lot of talent. They had Anna Cristina, and they also had Julia Bergman. And one other player that they had was Rosa Maria, who I thought really stepped up all women's VNL. Excuse me for scratching my nose. But yeah, in the end, Brazil wound up taking down Italy again in a 5-set barn burner. This matchup was so fire that my phone even overheated, which I should probably get an upgrade for a new phone, but I digress. But yeah, this was a thriller of a matchup. So Italy won the first set 25-21, and I'm thinking, this one might actually go Italy's way. But Brazil wound up taking the second set, and then they wound up winning the third set in overtime, and then Italy forced the fourth set, which I thought was pretty darn cool if you ask me. But then here was the interesting part about Brazil. So it was actually 11-11 in the fifth set, and then Brazil wound up winning a challenge off of a ball hit the floor or any sort of successful challenge. It was some sort of successful challenge, but I think it was a floor touch. But either way, Brazil went up 12-10, and that gave Brazil the momentum to eventually wind up winning the set 15-12. unbelievable performance from Brazil. I was just in awe about this. It was tough to stay awake for this matchup, but the rallies from this matchup were just jaw-dropping and breathtaking. And I knew this matchup was going to feed families. To anyone who doubted me, keep that same energy. I know ball. I actually know ball. Even though I picked the United States to win, I know some ball just because Italy-Brazil is always a banger of a matchup, no matter who's at full strength or who's playing for either team. But anyway, for Brazil, they were led by Ana Cristina, who had 22 kills. Rosa Maria had 14 kills, and Julia Bergman had 13 kills. Overall, it was a great win for Brazil as they dethroned the back-to-back women's VNL champions, which I thought was very impressive. Now, for Italy, they were led by Nervini and Paula Igonu, both having 14 kills, and Silia had 12 kills. The problem is for them is that Ekaterina Antropova only had 7 kills, but she only played 2 sets. So I'm guessing after that second set, she just struggled and she never saw the court again. So when one of your top players is struggling, you're not going to be winning a whole lot of matches. So it was a tough loss for Italy, but Brazil proved that they belonged in the VNL finals, and they proved that they belong in the gold medal match. So now who they will play was Türkiye as they took down China in 3. Watching this matchup really made me sick to my stomach because I thought to myself, why couldn't the U.S. play like this against China? Türkiye was just on one. Melissa Vargas was obviously Melissa Vargas. And yeah, she was just incredible. She had 21 kills. Not her big-time matchup, but in a 3-set match, that really is a big deal. And she also had 14 kills. Actually, there was one other player in double digits in terms of kills for Türkiye, and that was Aydin, who had 13 kills. And then for China, they were led by Zhuang, who had 13 kills, but it was not enough. So I only ask this: why couldn't the U.S. beat China? Why couldn't they have taken out China like Türkiye did so easily? The world may never know, and sadly, I guess China just played with nothing left to lose, and they just want to give their crowd something to, be happy about. And just because they want to prove that they weren't going to be the doormat when it comes to the VNL final. So there you have it. So for the gold medal match, I actually did not see the gold medal match. I'm sorry, not the gold medal match, the bronze medal match. I'm sorry. I didn't see the bronze medal match between China and Italy. I didn't really miss much as Italy took down China in 4. China tried as much as they possibly could, but Ekaterina Antropova had herself a game. She had 21 kills. They also got 11 kills from Far and 10 kills from Nervini. They didn't even need Paula Igonu to really go off. So, yeah, it was a good win for Italy. They at least medaled. I feel bad for China, but for me, they overachieved. They weren't supposed to. I don't think anyone had them advancing past the quarterfinals, unless you're a China fan. But yeah, Italy wound up winning, which was not surprising. I was not about to stay up till 12:30 a.m. my time to watch a bronze medal match. I mean, the problem with bronze medal matches is that you never know what a team's going to do. Either a team's going to be throwing in the reserves just because, we don't care about the bronze medal. We just want it. It was either gold for us or bust, or they were just going to maybe play all the starters. But either way, Italy wound up winning and they wound up medaling. They finished strong. All right, now for the gold medal matchup. Brazil-Türkiye. First set went to Brazil, 25-23. I thought Brazil did a good job outlasting Türkiye. Like, the first 3 sets were just unbelievably amazing. And then Türkiye kind of returned the favor, winning that second set 25-23. Third set, Türkiye wound up winning in overtime. I thought Türkiye, look, that was kind of a key set win right there. I thought that was kind of the momentum swinger right there. That's because Türkiye was going into the 4th set up 2-1, while Brazil needed to win in 5. Though they have had experience winning in 5, but in the 4th set, Türkiye went up 9-3 and eventually 13-7, and it was looking pretty bad for Brazil. But Brazil eventually tied it up at, I think it was well, they eventually took the lead at 19-18, but Türkiye retook the lead after a service error from Anna Cristina and then some big-time serves from Melissa Vargas. And eventually Türkiye wound up winning the match on a dump kill, which I thought was really cool, if you ask me. Just shows that setters are definitely are a thing and definitely are noteworthy, and they're just as underrated as the liberos, as Sahin was able to get the match-clinching kill off of a dump kill, and that was when the celebration was on for Türkiye. So Türkiye wound up winning their second gold medal in the women's VNL, as Melissa Vargas had 27 kills, which was fantastic. They also got 17 kills from Baladin and 12 kills from Aydin. They also got 19 digs from Igor, the libero, who I thought played out of her mind. But the MVP of the women's VNL was no doubt Melissa Vargas. So congratulations to Türkiye. Job well done, dude. Like, that was absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal work right there. And Brazil was no slouch. I don't care what anyone says saying, oh, we didn't have Julia Cudias, we didn't have Gabby Guimadas. I don't care. Your team still got to the VNL finals. Your team took down Italy, and your team took down a very good Japan team. I don't want to hear the excuses, okay? Okay. Now, for Brazil, they were led by Anna Cristina, who had 20 kills. Rosa Maria added 17 kills, and Julia Bergman added 12 kills. You got to feel bad for Brazil because this is the fifth time Brazil has silver medaled in the women's VNL finals, and they have yet to win the gold. They've always been the bridesmaid when it comes to the women's VNL finals and never the bride. And you got to feel bad for Brazil just because they have so much talent on their team. But, oh, man, a former women's national Brazilian team member said, when you compare Türkiye and Brazil, it's not even close. Brazil is going to win. I can't imagine seeing Brazil lose to a team that's inferior. Oh, man, was that the worst thing she could have said? Long story short, watch what you post on social media. I don't care if you're a former player or not. Former player, former coach, doesn't matter. If you eventually see your team, if you talk smack, you better back it up or better take that post down immediately. But yeah, everyone who was a Türkiye fan was having fun with that post. They were on a roasting session. If you all watch the movie How High starring Redman, you will look up the Get 'em scene. It was just a roasting session right there. Get 'em. But anyway, back to Brazil. You gotta feel bad for Brazil. Fifth time they've silver medaled. I'll just say this, at least they're consistent in terms of making the championship match. They just gotta find the way to get past the hurdle that is in front of them, whether it's Italy, whether it's Türkiye, whether it's the United States. Brazil will eventually get over the hump. But until then, their time is not now, and Türkiye's time is now. So who knows? Türkiye might even win the world championship. So ever since 2021, 4 of the 5 teams that have won the VNL have eventually gone on to win the world championship. And teams that have medaled in the women's VNL have eventually gone on to win gold in the world championship, which I think is pretty cool if you ask me. So Türkiye could be on a path to winning gold at the World Championship, but you can't count out Italy, you can't count out Brazil, you can't count out Canada, you definitely can't count out the United States, you can't count out Japan. Poland, I think, will be back with a vengeance. So we shall see what happens. But until then, we will wait for the World Championship for the near future. So, yeah, overall, I was just impressed by Türkiye, and you gotta feel real good for Coach Daniel, which I think he's done phenomenal work with the Türkiye women's national team, and they're on the up and up path. So keep an eye out for them. So there you have it. All right, but that'll do it for the women's VNL finals recap. It was disappointing, to say the least, for the United States, but they'll be back. At least I hope so. But that'll do it for the women's VNL finals recap. We're going to take ourselves another quick commercial break. When we come back, we've got the men's VNL finals to preview. Then we've got some AVP League action to discuss as the AVP League Cup has been awarded to one team already and clinched. And then we got a little high school girls volleyball to discuss. So keep it locked here. You were listening and watching Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Is made from the stadium lights to the stadium shade. The clubhouse crews, the on-field MCs, delicious park food and the summer breeze. Every voice in the game. Catch Dirt and Diamonds every single week. The California League coverage that you'll seek with Larry B and Freddie B. Every minor league season for the latest in the California League with Larry B and Freddie B on IE Sports Radio. Keep that dirt flying, and we'll see you next pitch.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out Dirt and Diamonds with Larry B and Freddie B. No relationship. That goes on every Monday at approximately 4 p.m. Pacific time. So you definitely won't want to miss that. It's a great show. They do a great job breaking down a lot of things. But let's get back on into the volleyball action. Welcome back to the second half of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of that sports. And I guess I should also make a plug for this too. 3 and Out is returning. 8 divisions in 8 days has just kicked off. The NFC West just started today, just a little while ago, as Larry B just went live at 5 p.m. Pacific time, which was 1 hour before this show went live. So I kind of feel bad for kind of getting in the way of his thunder, but I digress. All right, so men's VNL finals preview. But first and foremost, we need to talk a little USA men's volleyball. So their roster has just been released. So let me pull up the roster really quick. I have the overlay. Bang. There's the roster. Oh, that ain't the roster. You're kidding. Did I not add the roster? Gee, many Christmas, dog. All right, so y'all are going to have to give me a minute or two or not. Man, dog. I really didn't add the roster. Dude, I'm so mad. Okay, here we go. Bear with me. I have a bear with me, and his name is Steve. He's pretty scary if you ask me. Okay, all right. So the roster isn't going to be being added. So stupid me for not adding the roster. I wanted to add the graphic of the roster, but unfortunately, it was just not meant to be, and sadly, I have to take the L. So it is what it is. So I might as well just tell you all the roster. If you all go to USA Volleyball, you already have seen the roster. So they just announced the roster yesterday, and of course, they announced the roster yesterday. So Anyway, the roster consists of Matt Anderson, Mason Briggs, Jeff Gendrick, Cooper Robinson, TJ DeFalco, Micah Christensen, Taylor Averill, Micah Ma, Andrew Rowan, Jake Haynes, Cole Hartke, Ethan Champlin, Eric Shoji, Merrick McHenry, and Matt Kinnicky. So there you have it right there, and their matchup will be, well, let's actually get on into that in a little bit. But, yeah, that's your roster right there. I don't know if it's the exact same roster as it was in week number 1 or week number 3. All I know is that Cooper Robinson is back, which I think is, or back on the roster for a second straight time. So it's a second straight stint. So, yeah. So, is there a... Let me see if I can compare their roster. Okay. Here's the roster. Here's this week's roster compared to week 3 roster. So Matt Anderson and Jeff Gendrick, or Matt Anderson and Mason Briggs, they're both on the roster. Jeff Gendrick also on the roster. Okay, so Jake Haynes was not on the week. Oh no, Jake Haynes was on the week 3 roster. So Jordan Ewart was on the week 3 roster, but he's not on this week's roster. Champlin's on this week's roster. McHenry and Kinnicky are both on this week's roster. Micah Ma. Hartke is also on. Maybe they're allowed to bring one extra player. But it looks pretty much the same if you ask me. I mean, you still have your Shojis, you have your Briggs, you have your Anderson, you have your DeFalco, you have your setters. Okay, it looks like Rowan wasn't on the week 3 roster. So I guess Andrew Rowan replaces Jordan Ewart. So there you have it. Okay, that seems to be like the only main, that might be the only main difference, or the only difference in general. So yeah. Other than that, I guess the U.S. kind of went with the whole "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" theme. But there were some problems in terms of the. I would say there were big problems, but I was wondering where Gabby Garcia is. But I'm not Karch Karai, so don't ask me why. So yeah. Anyway, so let's preview the men's VNL finals. So, NL finals, here are your matchups. So, don't tell me I'm lagging. Let's just pull this plug out. All right, hopefully I'm not lagging. Looks like I'm not. Anyway, men's VNL finals. Here's your matchups: Japan, China, Italy, United States, Slovenia, Turkey, and Poland, Ukraine. Everything starts tomorrow. So, let's try to predict these matchups. If my luck is as bad as it was when it came to the women's VNL, I'm probably going to get every pick wrong. But the first matchup, you got Slovenia versus Türkiye. So I will just say every team that has, except for Poland, every team in the women or in the men's VNL finals has not won a championship, except for Poland. But first matchup is Slovenia-Türkiye. So Türkiye is making its first ever men's VNL finals appearance, while Slovenia is kind of been a regular. So Slovenia has had Türkiye's number throughout most of the meetings. I think the most recent meeting, or I think that Slovenia has won the last 5 or 7 meetings between them and Türkiye. But for Slovenia, here's my thing for them. They just have to play clean volleyball. Türkiye is going to come in probably a little intimidated just because they haven't had the experience in terms of being in the VNL finals. I mean, Türkiye has been really impressive. Like, them and Ukraine have been the biggest surprise. So, by the way, the start times for these matchups will vary. I think the first matchup is at midnight Pacific time. And then the next matchup following that is at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. So us West Coasters are going to struggle, especially with me who has to work. Yikes. Anyway, as for Slovenia-Türkiye, as long as Slovenia plays their game, I think they should be fine. Türkiye does have has some up-and-coming talent, but I just think that Slovenia should get the win over Türkiye. I think it'll be close, but I think if history repeats itself, Slovenia should win. Though Türkiye, Didn't Türkiye at least take a set off of Slovenia in week 3 of the men's VNL? Let me just confirm that right away real quick. I can't confirm it right away real quick, but you know what I mean. I think the two teams that met one another, they wound up. Yeah, no, Türkiye. That was Serbia. I'm sorry, I can't confirm it. So either way, I think this should be an interesting matchup, but I just think Slovenia should win. And this is no disrespect to Türkiye. I think Türkiye has a good roster, and I think they could be on the rise. But for now, I think Slovenia is going to win this matchup. Next matchup, you got Japan taking on the host team, China. So the men's VNL finals will also take place in China, except unlike the women's VNL finals, this takes place in Ningbo, Beilun, China. If I mispronounced that, I apologize. But this takes place. The men's VNL finals takes place in China as well. So China was the worst team in the VNL this year. They had only 4 points, and they only had one win. And if it weren't for China being the host team, they would have gotten relegated, and Canada would have been safe. Unfortunately, that was not the case, as China was the host team and Canada got relegated. So anyway, there's nothing to talk about when it comes to this matchup. Japan should be able to play most of their second team and maybe their third team. They should not need more than 3 sets to beat China. If they do, then there's a problem here. But Japan, they're the number 1 overall seed. They're 12-0. They should get past China with ease, with the greatest of ease. So there you go. All right, but that's Wednesday's matchups. Next up, for Thursday's quarterfinal matchups, you got Italy versus the United States. All right, round 2 between the United States and Italy. And this is the 4 versus 5 matchup. So this is a 50-50 matchup. I really think the United States left a lot of meat on the bone when it came to week 3 of the VNL on the men's side. Because they went 2-0 taking down China and Brazil. I mean, there's not much to write home about when you take down China. But the Brazil one was impressive. The loss against Bulgaria could have been avoided. And then the Poland loss was kind of inevitable, even though I predicted the U.S. to go 2-2, but I digress. I think those losses are beneficial to the United States because it's better they lost then instead of now. Italy beat the United States back in week 1, and Italy is still a darn good team, but the United States, I think, still has a lot to prove. That being said, it's going to be a close matchup. I would not be surprised if this match went 5, but I actually have the United States winning. I think the United States gets the job done against Italy, and I think they wind up winning and advancing to the semifinals for the first time under Karch-Price tutelage. I swear, if the U.S. turns me into a liar, I'm going to be so mad. I don't even think it's just tough for me to have to wake up at about 4:30, maybe 5 in the morning for work, and then to stay up this late. It would not be good for my health. So if I have to miss it, I have to miss it, but I'll watch the playback, or maybe, knowing my luck, this match will go 5, and by the time I wake up, the next match will have started, but I digress. But anyway, that's Italy-USA in a nutshell. As long as USA plays their game and they pass the ball well, they should be fine. All right, the last quarterfinal matchup, you got Poland versus Ukraine. All right, Ukraine has been another amazing story this year. They played their best ball when it truly mattered. And they really played well in week 2. Week 3 is kind of a little iffy, but they did finish strong, and Ukraine got the final spot in the men's VNL finals. But they take on the back-to-back reigning champion, Poland. That's going to be an uphill climb, especially since Ukraine is making its first ever men's VNL finals appearance. And Ukraine did push Poland to 5, where they got reverse swept. But let's be honest, Poland didn't have Wilfredo Leon. If they have Wilfredo Leon, it's a whole different match. But this time, Poland is going to win. They should win with a little bit more relative ease. Do not count out Ukraine by any means. I think Ukraine is still a good team. The problem is that inexperience is going to be what leads to their downfall. So until I see Ukraine adjusting on the fly to Poland's gameplay, I got to take Poland to beat Ukraine fairly easily. All right, but that is that right there for the quarterfinals. That's my quarterfinal predictions. Japan, Poland, Slovenia, and the United States advancing to the semifinals. So for the semifinals, I would have Japan versus the United States. All right, round two. If that occurs, then it's round two between the United States and Japan. And no matter who, unless Japan somehow forgets to play volleyball, Japan's going to be getting a rematch with either Italy or the United States, both of which Japan wound up beating in 5. But let's say they do draw the United States. I think no matter who Japan gets, I think they pull off the win. I think they're going to have to win it in 5, though. Those 5 setters are eventually going to catch up to Japan. I'm just going to say it right now. If Japan needs 5 to win every single match, which they have had, which every time they've wound up winning. Like, they're undefeated. I think they're like 7-0 or 6-0 in 5 setters. Either way, Japan is a very good team, but those 5 setters catch up to a team when it truly matters. Trust me, I know when it comes to seeing some of these teams. But yeah, I think the U.S. will compete. They actually had a chance. They went up 2-1 on Japan, but unfortunately, Japan was able to grind it out in the 4th set, and then they outlast them in the 5th set. As much as I want to have faith in the United States, I just think Japan's defense is going to lead the way. And it's going to be their digging defense. And it's not just going to be one play. It's going to be other plays. It's going to be like Ran Takahashi, amongst others. And heck, even if one player struggles, another player is going to carry the load and pick up the slack. So there you have it. So I got Japan beating the United States. I'm going to sound faithless, but I'm going to be 100% honest. I think thinking with my heart has kind of led to my downfall when it comes to the women's VNL finals. But I digress. So for the other semifinal, I would have Poland versus Slovenia. This one's another interesting matchup. Slovenia is a good team, but I think with Poland having Wilfredo Leon amongst others, Poland is a force to be reckoned with. And that's no disrespect to Slovenia. I think Slovenia is going to make Poland work for that win. But in the end, I think Poland pulls off the win just because, look, they have so much pedigree on their team. And it's so tough to stop a Poland team that's red hot and that's finally found all their pieces on their roster, or at least their main pieces, especially Leon. But I got Poland advancing past Slovenia. If the two advance, I can't imagine Slovenia or Poland losing to a first-time men's VNL finals team. But if it happens, it happens. And I will eat my crow and say, I apologize. I wasn't familiar with your game, but I digress. So my final would be Japan versus Poland, which means my bronze medal matchup would be the United States and Slovenia. Look, I can't really look. Bronze medal matches, like I said, they're tough to determine, but I got the United States winning just because the United States and whatnot. But okay, that aside, I think the United States wants to finish strong, and even though they would think they probably are gonna lose a heartbreaker to Japan, if anything. But they all know they want to finish strong when it comes to the men's VNL finals. But they're going to win bronze. I think they win their first medal under Karch Karai. That will be at least a nice momentum builder for the World Championship and any other tournaments that come before the next VNL. But yeah, I got the United States winning bronze. And as for gold, I have, like I said, my gold medal match will be Japan versus Poland. Man, this one's a tough one. I mean, I'm going to be 100% realistic, and this might piss off a lot of Japan fans. I actually have Poland winning. Here's why. Wilfredo Leon. I think Poland, back in week 1, they were not the Poland team that they were supposed to be. But now that they are at full strength, for the most part, now that they have Wilfredo Leon, I just think that this Japan team, I think if it goes 5, I think Poland will see to Japan's end. I think if it goes 5, Japan will meet its match. But if Japan wins the whole VNL and goes perfect, they have my respect. Do you know how tough it is to go undefeated in the VNL? I know Italy did it on the women's side, but on the men's side, with how Japan wound up winning, with how they wound up winning a bunch of 5-setters, with how they wound up going through a gauntlet minus China because, yeah. But, yeah, I just feel that Japan, if they go undefeated throughout this entire men's VNL run, they have my respect. But again, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a whole collective team effort. But even though Japan has depth on their team, I've got Poland winning the whole thing. I got Poland 3-peating. At least that my finals matchup should be of relevance, or it should come to fruition. This time, I'm not making the mistake of picking Poland. I think Poland gets the job done, and they win gold at the men's VNL. So there you have it. But who do you all have winning the VNL on the men's side between these 8 teams? I mean, I want to be faithful and pick the United States, but I just don't think it happens. I just think even if they get past Japan or China, heaven forbid, the United States I don't think the United States will get past Poland if Poland makes it that far. But you never know. But that'll do it for the men's VNL finals preview. It all starts tonight, well, at midnight. So, yeah. So, there you go. There's the men's VNL finals preview. So, that'll do it for that little bit of action. So, now let's go to the AVP League. Let's jump to the AVP League, and let's recap Week 7 of the AVP League. So, now the AVP League has crowned its AVP Cup champion, and this year's AVP Cup champion is the Palm Beach Passion. So even though, is this the right one? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So yeah, even though the Palm Beach Passion wound up, even though the Palm Beach Passion still have a week left, they wound up being crowned champions. So they didn't play this past week. But the AVP League took us to the EHP Resort and Marina in New York. So for the second straight week, the AVP League was in New York. I think it was in the East Hamptons. Yeah, East Hampton, New York. I'm happy about that. All right, but yeah, and unlike the previous week, no inclement weather got in the way, which I think was pretty cool. But yeah, let me just put this down real quick. There we go. Anyway, so let's go over the matches. The results are courtesy of Beach Volleyball Database. Salute to them. All right, so let's go over matchup by matchup. So San Diego Smash versus Miami Mayhem. First matchup we have recapping is Chase Buninger and Miles Evans on the men's side, taking on Andy Benish and Taylor Crabb. The Miami Mayhem have dominated throughout most of the season, and they held nothing back against the Smash as they took them down in the Battle of the Olympians, though they were grinded out matches, as the Mayhem took down the Smash 15-13 and 17-15. Look, Taylor Crabb and Andy Banish are just clicking on all cylinders when it comes to the men's side of the AVP and in terms of beach volleyball altogether. So this was no surprise right here. What was a little bit of a surprise was the next matchup. So it was the women's side of the San Diego Smash versus the Miami Mayhem. It was Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango taking on Kelly Cheng and Megan Kraft. So the battle of the Megans, as well as a little bit of experience. But in the end, the Miami Mayhem, led by Cheng and Kraft, took down Rice and Arango in 3, 15-13, 12-15, and 15-10. Very thrilling match right there, as Arango and Rice did earn 1 point for the Smash, but the Mayhem were able to earn 2 points. So the next matchups we had were the Austin Aces taking on the Brooklyn Blaze. The first matchup was Troy Field and Ron Wilcox of the Aces taking on Derek Bradford and Evan Corey of the Blaze. So this was kind of the battle of, I wouldn't say the up-and-comer. Yeah, I think that's about right. Up-and-comers, even though Evan Corey is an AVP / beach volleyball veteran, as well as Troy Field. But in the end, I was a little surprised by this. So Troy Field and Ryan Wilcox took down Derek Bradford and Evan Corey in straight sets, 15-9 and 15-11. So this was actually the first men's win of the Austin Aces since 2024. So ever since the league started, the Austin Aces on the men's side did not register a win. So that's how sad it was. But the Aces on the men's side with Wilcox and Field were able to get the job done against Bradford and Corey. That's tough right there for Bradford and Corey, but it's good. It's a good win for Field and Wilcox. So on the women's side, we had Taryn Brasher and Kristen Cruz taking on Lexi Denneberg and Devin Newberry. Yes, Lexi Denneberg and Devin Newberry. So unfortunately, my buddy, Julia Donlin, I almost said Scholes, but Julia Donlin needed to have some knee drainage. So unfortunately, she could not play in the AVP League matchup with her partner, Lexi Denneberg. So substituting for her was Devin Newberry. So it was good that Denneberg was able to get a partner before the whole gameplay happened. And it was the battle of the former UCLA players versus the former LSU beach volleyball players. But in the end, the former UCLA beach volleyball players took down the former LSU beach volleyball players in straight sets, mind you, 15-10 and 15-12. I know Devin Newberry had a big match. She had 9 kills. I think she had 3 blocks and I think 2 service aces. Newberry is definitely talented. I only wish we could have seen her and Savvy Simo Corey in the AVP League, but that's just how it is sometimes. But yeah, Devin Newberry and Lexi Denneberg being together must have brought back some great memories back when Newberry and Denneberg were both on UCLA. But yeah, there you go when it comes to that matchup. I don't think they wound up winning a national championship because they're kind of in that pool where USC had that 4-peat, which might not ever happen again in terms of volleyball, but I digress. So for Sunday's matches, we had the San Diego Smash taking on the Austin Aces. The men's match consisted of Chase Budinger and Miles Evans of the Smash taking on Troy Field and Ryan Wilcox of the Aces. And Budinger and Evans proved why they were Olympians, and they bounced back nicely as they wound up taking down Field and Wilcox 16-14 and 17-15. Again, it was a grinded out matchup for Budinger and Evans, but this time they were on the right side of the scoreboard as they wound up earning the full 3 points, which was very nice on their behalf. So good win for them. Unfortunately, it was a tough loss for Field and Wilcox. Now, for the second matchup, this was another stunner right here. So San Diego Smash on the women's side, which consisted of Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango, took on the Austin Aces, which consisted of Taryn Brasher and Kristen Cruz. Now, one may think TKN is probably going to win this one just because they're Olympians, they have experience, and they have great team chemistry with one another. Not so fast. Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango have been evolving in terms of their experience. And the fact that they pushed Cheng and Kraft to a 3-set battle shows that they are up to the challenge. And they definitely were up to the challenge as they wound up winning the match 15-13, 6-15, and 16-14. So yeah, a tough loss for the Austin Aces. It's just been one of those years for them. And sadly, it's just a bummer for them that they wound up losing, but that's a great win for Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango, beating Olympians and a very experienced pair for that matter. So great job to Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango, especially since TKN or Taryn Kristen Nation is, they were world champions last year. So yeah, the fact that they were that Rice and Arango wound up winning was just unreal. It certainly was not on my bingo card. Let me just say that right there. All right, next matchup was the Miami Mayhem versus the Brooklyn Blaze. The first matchup was Andy Benish and Taylor Crabb of the Mayhem on the men's side, taking on Derek Bradford and Evan Corey of the Blaze. In the end, Benish and Crabb continued their mean streak as they swept Bradford and Corey 15-9 and 15-10. Again, I just think the team chemistry with Benish and Crabb is just unreal, dude. Now, the second matchup I was not expecting. So the Brooklyn Blazes, Lexi Denneberg and Devin Newberry took on Kelly Cheng and Megan Kraft of the Miami Mayhem. So this time it was it was a little bit of a blast from the past. The former USC duo of Cheng and Kraft took on the former UCLA duo of Newberry and Denneberg. And I wouldn't call them duo. I just would call them alums, but I digress. But in the end, Denneberg and Newberry took down Kraft and Cheng in straight sets 15-10 and 15-13. For having a 1 week adjustment, I'll just say this. Lexi Denneberg did a great job of adjusting with Newberry. I'm not certain if Newberry was her partner back in college. I want to say she was. But if that's the case, then both of these two had great team chemistry. And the fact that they took down 3 Olympians and a future Olympian. So not for anything Julia Donlin. I'm sorry. Not for anything Julia Donlin. I hope that Devin Newberry doesn't swoop in, and I hope she doesn't go Tom Brady on Drew Bledsoe, but I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, talk about incredible. Like, Devin Newberry and Lexi Denneberg wound up going 2-0 this past week. That's incredible right there. So great job to them. And I'm sure Julia Donlin was one happy camper when it came to seeing Newberry and Denneberg just dominating the competition, sweeping the competition for that matter. So that was a great win by them, and that basically does it for Week 7 of the AVP League. So because the Miami Mayhem lost, the Palm Beach Passion wound up winning the AVP League because those two teams, Palm Beach Passion and Miami Mayhem, they wound up finishing their season as the Passion went 13-3, while the Mayhem went 12-4. And unfortunately for the Mayhem, they fell 1 win and 1 point short. Had the Mayhem won, then if the Mayhem wound up winning in 2, then they would have been the AVP League Cup champions. But because the Mayhem lost, because on the women's side, the Chang and Kraft wound up losing to Newberry and Denneberg, the Miami Mayhem had to settle for being the runners-up of the AVP League Cup, as the Palm Beach Passion, which did not play this week or next week, or this week or last week, they are the AVP League Cup champions, which I think is pretty nice if you ask me. So the Palm Beach Passion is on a takeover. But I'm just going to say this. The Palm Beach Passion and the Miami Mayhem might need their roster evaluated, just because you look at their team. Like I've said this before. I said it 2 weeks ago, and I'll say it again. The Passion and the Mayhem have a bunch of Olympians on their team. The Palm Beach Passion have 4 Olympians, past and present. And then the Miami Mayhem have 3 Olympians and a future Olympian. So everyone else is just trying to scratch and claw their way up to the top, while the Passion and the Mayhem just look down like trying to do the Principal Skinner meme, but I digress. But yeah, you look at the records when it comes to the AVP League. Palm Beach Passion finished 13-3. Miami Mayhem finished 12-4. The next closest team is 6-6, and that's the Dallas Dream. And the next closest team after that is the Brooklyn Blaze, who's 6-10. The New York Nitro is 5-11, but the interesting thing is that they have 22 points. So we'll see what happens this week. So this week is AVP League Week 8. So who's going to be taking home the bronze medal? That's an interesting concept, just because this week we've got the Austin Aces, the Dallas Dream, the LA Launch, and the San Diego Smash playing against one another. So this week the AVP League will be playing at the Commercia Center in Dallas, Texas. So you have that right there, which I think is pretty cool if you ask me. But yeah, this is the last week before the championship, the AVP League Championship. Yeah, this week takes place in Dallas, Texas at the Commercia Center. So looking at the schedule, the event schedule, join us for Week 8 of the 2026 AVP League season. This final regular season league event will take place at the Commercia Center in Dallas, Texas. Okay, at least they were simple and plain, and they didn't make any mistakes, because I think they need a little bit of a website editor, but I digress. Anyway, but for the matchup schedule, it'll go LA Launch versus San Diego Smash, which I think is going to be on it's going to be on Friday. So Friday and Saturday are the matches. So LA Launch and San Diego Smash face one another Friday on the men's and women's side, and then also on Friday we've got the Austin Aces and then the Dallas Dream. So it's the Battle of SoCal versus the Battle of the Texas Two-Step. Then on Saturday, you got the LA Launch and the Austin Aces. And then after those matchups, you've got the San Diego Smash and the Dallas Dream, which I think is pretty cool if you ask me. But yeah, that is pretty much that in terms of that matchup right there. It's not going to really matter. I actually don't know the record of the women's side. Let's actually look. look on the AVP website just because why not? All right, so the women's leaderboard. So the team, some of these teams have already locked in their season. Looks like on the women's side, the number 1 seed has already been clinched, courtesy of the Palm Beach Passion. On the women's side, Melissa Jimana-Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson lead that. They went 6-2. So they've locked in the number 1 seed. The Miami Mayhem with Kelly Cheng and Megan Kraft are 5-3. They haven't locked in the number 1 seed just yet. The Brooklyn Blaze, which is Julia Donlin and Lexi Denneberg, they went 4-4. They have finished their season in terms of the regular season. And then the LA Launch with Maddie Anderson and Elena Chacon. They're also 3-3, but they have not finished their season. They will hope to lock up a playoff spot. I think it's top 4 teams make the playoffs in terms of the women's side. I don't know how the AVP is going to do their playoffs like they've done in years past. Like, I know the first year was everyone makes the playoffs, and then last year was top 4 teams make the playoffs. Now this year, it's probably going to be the same thing. Top 4 teams make the playoffs. And then in 5th place is Taryn Brasher and Kristen Cruz with the record of 3-3. Dallas Dreams, Betsy Flint and Kylie DeBerg are also 3-3. San Diego Smash with Megan J. Rice and Gina Arango, they're 2-4. And the New York Nitro with I almost said Lexi Rodriguez. Tony Rodriguez and Molly Shaw, they finished 2-6. In their season, I don't think they're going to be playoffs unless every team makes the playoffs. But I think that would kind of defeat the purpose. I think the league championship is a 2-day thing, but I digress. But yeah, Palm Beach Passion with Melissa Jimana-Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson have locked up the number 1 seed. Kelly Cheng and Megan Kraft aren't fully locked in as the number 2 seed, but they could if the launches, if they get a certain combination of, if a team doesn't go 2-0. Well, actually, if the LA Launch doesn't go 2-0 and they don't sweep, and if they don't earn if they don't earn anything, if they don't earn 5 or 6 points, then the Launch will be stuck as the 3 seed. But if the Launch earns 5 points and they wind up going 2-0, then they will overtake the number 2 seed, Kelly Cheng and Megan Kraft. So there you go. All right, so that's the women's side of things. Then on the men's side, you've got the Miami Mayhem and Palm Beach Passion tied up. The Miami Mayhem with Taylor Crabb and Andy Benish finished with a record of 7-1. Same can be said for the Palm Beach Passion's Trevor Crabb and Phil Dahlhauser. The only difference is that Taylor Crabb and Andy Benish had 20 points, while Palm Beach Passion's Trevor Crabb and Phil Dahlhauser had 19 points. So teams that have also finished their season are the New York Nitro with Kame Schulk and Theo Brunner. They went 3-5 and finished with 11 points. And then the Brooklyn Blazes, Evan Corey and Derek Bradford, they had a 2-6 record and they finished with 7 points. So playoffs are still on the table for a lot of these teams, except for the Nitro and the Aces. No, not for the Aces unless something weird happens, but I digress. But yeah, 3rd place is the Dallas Dreams, Paul Ottman and Miles Partain. They're 3-3 with 9 points. The San Diego Smashes, Chase Budinger and Miles Evans. They're 3-3 with 7 points. The LA Launches, Hagen Smith and Logan Weber. They're 2-4 with 7 points. The New York Nitros, Kame Schulk and Theo Brunner. Like I said, they're in 5th place, but their season's over with for the time being in terms of the regular season. Then the Austin Aces is Troy Field and Ryan Wilcox. They're 1-5 with 4 points. Yeah, they would need a miracle to make the playoffs, and they'd probably get in as the number 4 seed. And that's if the Nitro doesn't overtake them. But I don't think they could even. I think they would need help from like Hagen Smith and Logan Weber, if anything. But I digress. But yeah, the playoffs are still on the table for a lot of these teams, like the Dream, like Lottman and Partain, Budinger and Evans, Schulk and Brunner, even though they're not playing, as well as Smith and Weber. And heck, Bradford and Corey aren't going to the playoffs. So seeds 1 through 6 are pretty much still in contention for a spot in the playoffs. So there you go. All right, but that is that right there for the AVP League Week 8 preview. it's almost playoff time, ladies and gentlemen. And this year's playoffs will be taking place like it was last year, where it'll be taking place in Chicago, Illinois, which I think is pretty cool if you ask me. So the league championship will be from September 5th through the 6th. So I imagine it should be a 4-team playoff in terms of genders on the men's side and the women's side. But yeah, competition will begin at 10 a.m. Box office will open at 8:30 a.m. with ticketed areas opening at 9 a.m. Competition begins at 10:30 a.m. Same can be said for the Sunday matchup. Blah 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 blah. We'll get into the AVP League Championship when the time comes. So yeah, at least the event details are pretty much, looks like it's a pretty good if you ask me in terms of sentence wise, but I digress. All right, but that'll do it for the AVP League. Yeah, we're already almost through the AVP League right away in terms of the regular season. In a few more weeks, there's going to be the Manhattan Beach Open is going to be a thing. I know this week is also the 6-man in Manhattan Beach. Unfortunately, I will not be there, and it's not because I don't want to burn and get sunburnt again, but it's also because I'm going to be elsewhere. So I'm actually going to be at Queens of the Court in Irvine. So high school girls volleyball is right around the corner, and this weekend is going to be the Queens of the Court tournament hosted by Foothill High School of Santa Ana. So the Queens of the Court tournament isn't it doesn't count for actual competition. It's basically like a dress rehearsal. There's going to be a lot of good teams that are partaking in it, like Mater Dei of Santa Ana, Sierra Canyon of Chatsworth. You also got San Juan Hills, which has Megan Hodges that is committed to Nebraska, and Santa Margarita, which has Ireland Real, who's committed to Texas. And then you've got other good teams like J. Sarah and Orange Lutheran. I know Corona Del Mar is going to be in there. Elisa Nagel is going to be in there. I think, Great Oak or Oak Park is going to be in there. But regardless, it's always a fun tournament. I've always loved following it, even though it doesn't count for actual competition that counts toward the record of teams. It's still a nice little dress rehearsal. And as for the elite division, there's 2 separate divisions. Well, it actually is 4 altogether. There's the elite varsity division, which is like the best, or teams that want like a true challenge, want to partake in. And then there's the varsity division, which is not as big time and challenging as the elite varsity division, but still pretty darn good, if you ask me. There are still some good teams in there. I think a few teams that I can name off the top of my head are Dana Hills, which is coached by former Long Beach State great Tom Hoff. You also have Beckman, Edison, Tesoro, San Clemente, Long Beach Poly, who really wowed me. Foothill's on the up and up. Remember, Foothill was who produced Rachel Fairbanks, so don't forget about them. But yeah, those are some teams that are worth noting. Redlands has also had great showings when it comes to the. By the way, another team that I forgot to mention in the elite varsity division was Corona Centennial. But Redlands in the varsity division is also a team that has a great showing. So there you go. But yeah, I'll be there for both days. I plan on doing an article for Prep Dig. Speaking of Prep Dig, the day before, aka this Friday, there's actually going to be a stock-up showcase at Momentous Volleyball Club in Irvine from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that's California time, so Pacific time. So I will be there for Prep Dig, and maybe I'll even get some interviews with some prospects and players that wowed me and so on and so forth. But yeah, I've never really attended a stock-up showcase. I've never really attended showcases, but there's a first time for everything. I already know it's going to be hot, but I think I know why they have this whole thing at 6 p.m. because it's going to be a lot cooler. Irvine is going to be blistering hot. If you're going to be in the Irvine area for Queens of the Court, I suggest dressing appropriately. Do not, I'm probably going to dress in sweats just because why the heck not? But stay hydrated and stay cool as much as possible because it's going to be HE double hockey sticks when it comes to that gym. That gym can be sweltering hot, dude. It is a nightmare in that gym. I remember, I think was it last year or 2 years ago? 2 years ago, it was like in the high 80s. I'm like, get me out of here. It's like a freaking sauna, dude. But this tournament's always fun. Foothill does a great job organizing this event. And I can't wait to see every team that's in this tournament, from the elite varsity division to the varsity division. I know I'll be missing out on the Frostoff and JV, but I cannot wait that long. I really don't want to stay there all day in 80-degree weather in a gym that's going to be sweaty and just super hot. I'm sorry, but I can't stay all day. I have to just do varsity and elite varsity. I'm sorry, everybody. But anyway, that'll do it for that little bit of a preview. But yeah, if you're in the area, if you're in the Irvine area, and I would highly recommend going to the Stock Up Showcase. If you want to get recognized by Prep Dig, I will be there to get you recognized. And obviously Michelle Bamford, good friend of the show, she will be there. She's an expert when it comes to this whole thing. But definitely do attend this if you're in the Irvine area and you need to get recognized. And this goes for everyone that's looking to get their names up. Like, the only way you can get your name out there is if you put yourself out there, is if you take chances and you make mistakes and you basically tell everyone who you are, and you basically tell the scouts who you are and what you want to do in terms of the your volleyball future. So there you have it right there. And that's basically that. I highly encourage you all to attend it. I know it can be a little bit pricey, and this will also be streamed on Baller TV. Don't ask why. Don't look at me. But yeah, this whole event will be streamed on Baller TV, but I highly encourage you attend this in person, especially if you're trying to get your stock up. So there you go. But other than that, that's going to basically do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Covered quite a bit. We covered the women's VNL finals, the men's VNL finals, the AVP League. Hard to believe that everything's going to be coming to an end. What are we going to do for next week? I just realized that, because I'm obviously going to be recapping the men's VNL finals, but there's the Manhattan Beach Open isn't next week. It's the following week, or another week, or I think it's in 2 weeks. I know it's the 14th through the 16th. And then that's when the USA Cup, that's the same weekend as the USA Cup, which, right? Great job, AVP. Way to, schedule something. Way to have scheduling conflict. But I digress. Anyway, but yeah, that'll do it for this week's show. We'll have to wait and see what happens with next week's show. Obviously, we'll be recapping the men's VNL finals, and then I'll be talking a little bit of the Queens of the Court tournament. But I'm not sure what we're going to do after that week. What are we going to preview? What are we going to preview? With no AVP that week, with no VNL or international ball, no college ball, it's just probably going to be a recap of, it's probably just going to be me recapping the men's VNL finals, and then me recapping week 8 of the AVP League. And then it's just going to be a preview for the AVP's Manhattan Beach Open, and then a preview of maybe some of the NCAA women's volleyball season. So we'll have to see what happens. But until then, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy all the volleyball action happening this week, whether it's on the beach or indoors, whether it's professional level or high school level. Just enjoy all the volleyball action. Stay cool as well, because this heat wave is not letting up by any means. So until then, have a great week. I will see you all this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Momentous Volleyball Club in Irvine. That's where you'll see me. And heck, come say hi to me. I don't bite. Until then, that'll do it. I'll see you all next time. Take care, everybody. Peace.
Whoa! Set Point, turn it up, let's go! IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. From the high school gyms to the college lights, from the beach in the sun to the world stage bright. family gather